This is the WatchGeekTime podcast.
Thank you for tuning into Watch Geek Time. This is the Watch Geek Time podcast. It's a conversation about heritage, history, and why we're so hooked on horology. Sit back, relax. We're going to talk about everything from watches to watches. The Watch Geek Time podcast is recorded live on Saturdays from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Also streamed live at WatchGeekTime.com and on Apple TV. I am your host, Scott Goldman. As always on the boards,
it's Jody.
Hello, Jody.
Hey, how are you, Scott?
I'm doing great, buddy. Did you have a good week?
I did.
What did you bring me this week as a new...
Oh, I've got a Road Warrior here.
Have
this
you?
is a beautiful quartz G-Shock.
Actually, I like that watch a lot. And that's another solar fancy doodle of yours right there.
It is, and this thing's tough. I mean, this is
Looks like
something
a
you
tire.
wear just every day and hardworking, just, you know, you
Beat
can
the
really
crud
beat
out of
this
it.
thing up. It's
Yeah.
it's water resistant. I think it's got, listen to this. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, what is that? What does that little sound beepy mean?
Oh, I'm just flicking through the pages here. It's got world time and what have we got? 24-hour time, stopwatch, the usual.
It's got a lot of
things.
functions.
Yeah,
and it's a
so-
Casio G-Shock,
The old G-Shock.
the old G-Shock. Can I see that? Hold that up.
Absolutely, yeah. Look at it, and the screen will glow.
You know,
so-
we got to, it's funny. A couple of my friends would give you and I crap for liking it. But I tell you, that's the kind of watch that takes a beating. And you mow the lawn with that watch. You do the gardening with that watch. You go to the
Exactly,
gym
yeah.
with that watch. I like that.
Yeah,
I think that cost you about $99.
fantastic.
And I'm wearing a Habring. It's my Foy Durante, which totally suits the show.
It is a beautiful piece, actually. I do
Thank
like
you.
that.
Thank you. It suits the show because today we're going to talk about International Watch Company and Habring. So I'm wearing my Habring Foy Durante.
Actually, I can see the band from here too. That looks really nice.
Kind of like a
Yeah,
blue
it's-
Kevlar thing.
Yeah,
Maria Habring picked that out for me. I'll get to that when we talk about Habring.
great.
We got a great show today. Very excited. We got a studio guest, Jonathan Ward of Icon 4x4. You'll see a lot of his great collection of both cars and watches at WatchGeekTime.com. And, of course, our new Instagram page, which is WatchGeekTime Pics, P-I-X.
Picks.
And we also now, because we're such shameless self-promoters, we also have a Twitter feed, Watch Geek Time, or I guess it's at Watch Geek Time.
Yeah.
So it's hashtag everything today on the Watch Geek Time. All right, so we're also going to talk about today's magic word, Hertz.
Hertz?
Not like owie Hertz.
Oh, I'm thinking frequencies.
Oh,
Hertz.
of course you are. You're a bass player.
Music.
No, heartbeat. Frequency of a watch is based on hertz. But before we get to that, let's do a little email with Jody.
Oh, yes. Let me just pull this up.
All right.
Okay, so here's one from Audrey from Studio City. And she writes, Scott, last week you spoke about smartwatches and I was wondering which one is best for Android phone owners.
Well, I think that's a great question, Audrey. Jody, you might be better suited, but I think you and I during the week we went to Best Buy and we looked at the Samsung watch. That was kind of neat.
It was, yeah.
The Moto I thought was cool. Seiko had one, which was nice. Audrey, I got to tell you, a lot of the Swiss watchmakers are actually making their smartwatches for the Android. Tag Heuer has one.
I didn't see that one.
And I think, if I don't miss my guess, if you buy a Tag Heuer watch, a wearable they call it, you can trade it in 2 years when they've got it with an actual mechanical movement. So they've figured out how with a smartwatch, they're going to have a mechanical movement, which I guess charges up some capacitor inside of the watch to power the smart stuff. Anyways, I like the Samsung watch, but like you know me, I'm not a fan of the wearables yet.
Yeah, you'd have to have a good reason for it or good use as a tool. To me, it's like a tool.
Well, I also think we also saw for like $200, so it was pretty. If you're unhappy, you can bring it back.
Yeah.
All right, got another email for me, Jojo?
Yeah. This one's Michael from Indianapolis, and he's asking, brands such as Patek Philippe boast about the number of complications they can fit into a watch. What is a complication? Does it mean the watch itself is complicated?
Great question, Michael from Indianapolis. No, a complication doesn't necessarily mean the watch is complicated. However, a complication was traditionally known as anything but hours, minutes, and seconds. So for a really long time, having a date display, say at 3 o'clock, a little window, or even at 6, or even at 12 on some watches, that was considered a complication, but no longer because it's more commonplace.
Is that just the numbers themselves? But what if it were to display the actual day?
So when a watch displays the day of the week, say like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that's considered a complication. Okay. A chronograph is a complication. Some people are big fans of the chronograph.
Right.
And it's a great complication. Minute repeater is a complication.
Yeah.
Power reserve is a complication.
Right.
GMT is a complication.
Automatic winder?
Automatic winder, not a complication.
Okay.
Feature, like a tourbillon, not a complication. Complicated, but not a complication. Simply an escapement, just a different kind.
So where it becomes almost like an industry standard, is that where it takes it away from being a complication?
I think when it becomes an accepted function within the watch.
Right.
So when it became commonplace to put a date display on the watch,
right,
then the date display, meaning the day, the month.
It just became the norm and it was just accepted.
Not a complication any longer. Now, Patek Philippe boasts of making watches with many, 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 many complications jammed inside, and they include the tourbillon as one of their complications. Right. And there's been some brouhaha back and forth about this sort of thing. But I personally, for me, a tourbillon doesn't count. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, some of them are really amazing and do some outstanding things like turn around on 2 or 3 axles. They're complicated, but not a complication.
Right.
Still got to have the watch. It's got to have a heartbeat, like we're going to talk about with Hertz.
Right.
So if you have any questions that you'd like to submit to the Watch Geek Time, submit them to Scott at WatchGeekTime.com, and I will read them on the air. Actually, no. Jody will read them on the air.
I'll do that.
I will answer them on the air. Now, for today's show, we got a great guest, Jonathan Ward. But before we get to our great guest, we're going to talk a little bit about one of our watch words, which is Hertz. Hertz, or HZ.
Tell me about it, Scott.
Okay, so Hertz is actually the frequency at how we measure the vibrations per hour, or the frequency of a watch, basically the watch's heartbeat and how fast it's running. And what it really means is the oscillations per second. So, for instance, inside of a watch, you have this balance wheel that's going back and forth very rapidly. And in modern day watches, that frequency is 28,800 vibrations per hour, or what is known as 4 hertz.
Right.
So 1 hertz is 7,200 vibrations per hour. 4 hertz is 28,800 vibrations per hour. And how do we get there? Well, if you look at a Rolex, or really just about any mechanical watch, you'll see a sweeping hand Not a clicking hand like a quartz watch, but an actual sweeping seconds hand moving its way around the dial. If you could slow that down with, say, high-speed photography, what you'd really see is that seconds hand is making 8 tiny little moves per second.
Right.
It's not actually sweeping.
But the increments are so small, it looks like a sweep to the eye.
Exactly right. So if you look at this Habring I'm wearing, you'll notice at 9 o'clock, there's what we call a foy-durante hand whipping itself around.
Yeah.
Now, the seconds hand is making a 1 second leap. We call that a deadbeat second hand. It's not a quartz watch. It's an actual complication where you're forcing the seconds hand to make 1 jump per second.
Right.
And the foy-durante hand is actually showing you every oscillation of the balance wheel. So as it goes back and forth, it does so very quickly.
Right.
8 times a second in a 4 Hertz watch.
Right.
A 3 Hertz watch runs at 21,600 vibrations per second. So how does the math work? It's pretty simple. 8 touches per second is 480 times a minute. And when you multiply that 480 times 60 minutes, you get 28,800 vibrations per hour.
Okay.
And it never stops, or the watch stops.
All right.
So you've got to also imagine, if you're looking at this Habring, think about the tolerances Richard had to think about for that little hand that's whipping around all the time.
It's great.
It's really quite a watch.
It's really cool.
So we've got 3 Hertz, which is 21,600 vibrations per hour. There are a lot of modern day watches, including tourbillon watches, that move at this slightly slower heartbeat.
Okay.
There's also a balance, going back to one of our previous shows, Jody, about the power reserve on a spring and how we're going to unwind that spring.
Right.
My perpetual 8-day calendar watch has an 8-day power reserve. And you notice how small that balance wheel is. Plus, it's running at 3 Hertz. Old pocket watches run at 2.5 Hertz or 18,000 vibrations per hour. Chronographs, for example, are running at 5 Hertz. That's why they're able to measure in tenths of seconds.
Right.
And Breguet has a 10 Hertz watch, which can measure hundredths of seconds. So that seconds hand is making 100 tiny little moves per second.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah.
All right. So that's our word for the day. Hertz. Hertz. It doesn't hurts. But it is a really important thing to understand in watchmaking. And it's something I think that watchmakers struggle with all the time.
Didn't you tell me, Scott, that you knew a watchmaker who actually made a 1 Hertz watch?
I did. Our good friend Martin Braun from Switzerland. And we're going to interview him on a show coming up here very soon. Why do you ask me a question and then put your hand on the board?
Let me just push this up.
Hey,
I think it is.
how
We're
about
on
that?
the clock here.
I know we are. Well, that music means it's time for a commercial here on Watch Geek Time. We're going to be right back as we step aside so the man can have his due and Jody and Casio can have theirs.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back. This is the Watch Geek Time podcast.
There are movements. Omega coaxial, the most perfect mechanical watch movement in the world.
And now, here's the Watch Geek, Scott Goldman.
I am the Watch Geek, and you are also the Watch Geek, and Jody is a Watch Geek, and my four-legger Max, we're all Watch Geeks. Yeah. So, a lot to get to in the show. Great interview coming up with automotive designer Jonathan Ward.
Looking forward to that.
You know it. Real quick, programming note. We are live 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Saturdays at WatchGeekTime.com and on Apple TV. Jody, we're going to talk about International Watch Company, IWC, which is actually, ironically, in my estimation, an American company.
Right.
Because it was founded by an American engineer, watchmaker, Florentine Ariosto Jones.
Ariosto, that's how you say it. Not Ariosto.
Well, Florentino Ariosto Jonesy. And that's why he's known as F.A. Jones. And he was a director of an American company in Boston that made watches. But he wanted to do something bigger and better. And there was some problems with getting skilled watchmaking labor here in the United States.
Was he focusing on, was it the pocket watches in the time, or was it the bigger clocks for mantles and stuff?
Well, both. The company made both. Okay. And I think that's really what drove him to want to move into another country like Switzerland and become part of the wristwatch making trends. And I think he met some resistance once he got there. You know, everybody was speaking French. And, but there was a hard time getting people hired. They were fearful for their jobs. He wanted people to construct watches for him in their homes.
Really?
To start off. Yeah, he had some hard times. But what was really cool is this town of Schaffenhausen was actually, in about 1850, it was very far behind in the industrial age. So another name that we know, Moser, stepped up and built a hydroelectric power plant in Schaffenhausen. And actually, this became a cornerstone for all future industrialization in almost all of Switzerland.
Really?
So F.A. Jones did find a place to settle, and he did set up a factory. And what's really interesting, this is the great story. In World War II, the factory was mistaken as being a Nazi bomb-making facility. The Americans, us, the Air Force, had plotted a course of a strafing run. They were going to bomb a bunch of these bomb-making facilities. And this Schaffenhausen factory, the IWC, was among them. And it's just ironic and maybe a stroke of luck that the bomb that got dropped on the factory crashed through the glass roof, and it was a dud.
Wow.
Very strange. Yeah. It was a dud. And instead of exploding, it simply caught fire. About a third of the factory workers rushed out and put the fire out, but the factory was damaged nevertheless.
Now, ironically, was it deemed an American company? Even though it was based there, but was it still? Well,
I think they realized they'd made a mistake because they saw an American flag flying on the property, and they thought, uh-oh. So, as the story goes, Roosevelt, who was the president at the time, was so upset about what had happened, he sent the Army Corps of Engineers in there the very next day, and they rebuilt the burned down part of the factory in less than a week, and they were back in business. So it's a great story. I don't know those of you that own IWC, but it kind of goes right into our next story about Habring, which is this husband and wife team from Austria. Richard Habring is the guy who actually designed the single pusher chronograph for IWC. Their monopulsante. And a monopulsante is a pretty cool trick because you start and stop and then reset the chronograph with a single button. Hence mono, one, pulsante, push.
Okay.
Single push. And then Richard, after he left IWC, went to form his own company to show that even the Viennese, he is from Vienna, but even the Austrians, I guess more specifically, can make watches. And That's why I'm wearing my Habring today. He came up with this cool Foidurante watch. Great. And he and his wife have this great, what they call, they're the organic farmers of independent watchmaking.
Right.
I get the message, Jody.
Just pushing. Here we go. You ready?
It's Scott Goldman and Jody Daly of the Watch Geek Time. Visit us at WatchGeekTime.com. Visit us at Watch Geek Time Pics on Instagram. And, of course, Watch Geek Time at Watch Geek Time on the Twitter. We'll be right back with a great interview after these messages.
When you wrestle a gorilla, you don't stop when you're tired. You stop when the gorilla's tired. That's why, if you have a prang and your wheels just aren't turning, the good folks at More Than could send you a courtesy car within 2 hours. To find out more, visit morethan.com. I'm More Than Freeman. Thank you for listening.
Excludes Northern Ireland. Offer may be withdrawn at any time. Terms and conditions apply. Comprehensive cover only using our recommended repairers.
There is a watchmaking standard that is revered around the world. That standard comes from Rolex. From clasp to bracelet to its unique watertight oyster case, a Rolex holds its value because it was intended to. Crafted from just 3 precious metals, platinum, steel, and gold, each defies the ordinary. Its steel, 904L, virtually indestructible and corrosion resistant, is incomparable. Its patented Ever Rose Gold, created in an exclusive foundry, will remain beautiful for life. Inside, a genuine Rolex movement is a product of superiority and remarkable testing. It is unrivaled. At Rolex, flawless standards create more than a watch. They create a value that was meant to endure. For a complete selection of Rolex timepieces, visit your official Rolex jeweler.
Available at Lux, Bond, and Green Jewelers, Westport, Greenwich, and other locations throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts, where every box has a story.
This is the Watch Geek Time podcast.
I'm on my way, I'm making it. I've got to make it show, yeah.
Welcome to Watch Geek Time. This is the Watch Geek Time podcast. It's a conversation about heritage, history, and why we're all so hooked on horology. The Watch Geek Time podcast is recorded live on Saturdays between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Stream live at WatchGeekTime.com and on Apple TV. I am your host, Scott Goldman. In the studio with me today is a very special guest. He's lead designer, founder, and CEO of Icon Vehicles here in Los Angeles. Welcome to the studio, Jonathan Ward.
Why, thank you, Scott. Happy to be here.
Jonathan, you love watches like we all love watches.
Guilty.
So while we're on the subject of watches, let's talk about that nav. Tell me what that is.
Well, at first it sounds like a bomb, so I can hold it up here. Mm-hmm. It's a beast. So I was in Germany recently for a classic car show, and there was a man lurking in the corners, a little cabinet of mechanical oddities, and he had some really cool watches. And what's funny about it, or rather the irony of it, is then I later in this trip went to Basel, where you couldn't buy a watch if you tried to. There was nothing that was I could afford that I wanted, and there was nothing vintage. But this guy had the coolest stuff. So I found this, and it's a World War II aviator's watch. It's super simple. It's got a black dial, nice lumina, nice outer track wheel, killer hands, light batons but not too fat, and sub-dial seconds at 6. But what's trippy about it, it was new old stock when I bought it, so it was still all cosmoline gooey, and the don't wind it is very old. So the guy, I had to take it straight to my guy to get it dialed in. So
at Van Nuys and Ventura?
Yeah, I love him. Yeah. I really do. Marvin, I think most of us geeks know. So Marvin was, whatever. They were kind of an entry level, but good tool of a watch back in the day. But this is a NIV ROM. So
Makes no sense.
It makes absolutely no sense. And I cannot solve this mystery. I've been trying. So please, listeners, if somebody can answer this age-old mystery, please let us know. It's the same font as Marvin, but it is backwards. But the N is orientated correct, so it's not like some drunken idiot put the stamp down wrong. It's simply Nivram. And then as you go inside the movement, same deal. You look at the wheel, and it's the typical Marvin wheel you've seen a billion times. I think it's only like a 7-joule movement, whatever. Keeps perfect time. But even that says Nivram. So it's not just a dial mistake. It's the trippiest deal. I can't figure it out.
You know, I wonder if there wasn't a number of these watches made for a specific army detail, or, you know, we were looking at the Pakistani Air Force watch, the Omega Special. You know, some of these makers made these watches for...
But not with unique branding. That's what's strange.
Well, maybe Nivram.
Now, so ever since I got it and I've been geeking out searching Nivram, I have seen 3 or 4 other model Nivram watches. My only thought would be maybe it was a move like Toyota and Lexus, where Marvin decided they wanted to go into a different price tier with their assets and develop a new line for that. I don't know, though. No one can explain it. It's the weirdest thing. But it's a cool watch. It's fixed lugs, but not in the early kind of transition watch fixed lug, in that
it looks like a wire lug.
Yeah, it's a wire, but they're fixed. So they're actually part of the casting or whatever. It's all base metal, nothing fancy.
And you got a NATO on there.
Yeah, I got a crappy NATO on here. I like NATOs. Everyone always gives them a hard time, but they're fun and easy to change.
Everybody's a hater these days. And, you know,
screw them.
Yeah.
Screw the haters.
I
But nice
agree.
coin edge detail, ridiculous crown. It's probably 39 millimeter. And hey, it was only like $250, $300.
You can't go wrong.
I got your Shinola right here.
You can't go wrong. And you know, it's funny. I can hear that thing ticking.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I think I have a couple watches from the teens that are louder, but this is pretty loud.
I can hear it right now. It's a cool one. The Nivram, you'll see it at WatchGeekTime Pics on Instagram. WatchGeekTime Pics, PIX. All right. So, back to your profession as an automotive designer.
It's a profession. I forget that sometimes.
Well, I think it's a joy. I think it's a love, but it's certainly it's how you make your commerce. So
yeah, but I think above all else, I mean, I walked away from another successful career, as did my wife, when we made the conscious decision, without any intelligent forethought, planning, SWOT analysis, business plan, anything, to do this. That you have to do what you love to be who is lovable. So at the end of the day, if your heart's not in it, don't do it. And I don't care if that means buying a Rolex because your friends told you a Rolex is a fancy watch and you don't really feel it, all the way through to the people that you share air with and the things that you do. So yeah, to follow my passion and be able to employ 50 plus people and actually dream about projects and wake up and go knock them out and not go, oh God, I got to go to work. It's everything. It really is. And I think us Westerners are a little too quick to forget that and work to live versus live to work.
Well, but I also think that doing what you do as a bespoke automaker, and for those of you who are not 100% aware of what Jonathan does,
That's a good point. We better explain what the hell I'm doing and why I'm here.
Icon4x4.com. Jonathan is a bespoke automaker. He specializes in making 4x4s that your grandfather never could have possibly dreamed of.
Basically the idea is that I love vintage transportation design, the aesthetic, the continuity. You know, this is back in the eras where in all levels of design, somebody in leadership had the balls to let one person drive what the product stood for. So you can take a vehicle from the 1930s, let's say, and every last thing came from one person's hand, sketchbook, soul, heart. And so there's this continuity of intended purpose and utility and style that just is gone today because Wall Street has screwed modern car design. It's all, focus groups and
but even
pencil pushers.
But even for the guy who can afford the most expensive Mercedes, the Icon represents something that nobody else has. And that's the bespoke nature of what you're doing.
Yeah. So basically what we try and do is, we take designs that are already part of our collective culture, and we revisit them in a manner that makes them viable as a daily driver. So that manifests itself several ways. We have our production models, which include the FJ series based on the old 1960s Land Cruisers. Then we have the BRs based on the old Ford Broncos from the 60s. We have the Thriftmaster or TR based on the 1950s Chevrolet Thriftmaster pickups. And then we have a crazy series of one-offs that we call derelicts or reformers, which can be, and actually currently are, everything from like a 1937 Lincoln Zephyr Coupe to a 58 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud that looks like shit, looks abandoned, sort of barn find romance of patina and wabi-sabi, but then we'll laser scan that, get it into CAD, and then engineer modern chassis, brakes, steering, emissions, suspension, and a good part of the perversions of modern cars like navigation and Bluetooth and seat heat and climate control. But we stop short of the superfluous crap that makes your car go to the landfill in short order.
Well, it looks like a jalopy, but it's hardly.
Yeah,
a
and
jalopy.
some people totally don't get it, but frankly, that's part of the fun. And, you know, I love my derelict and the clients that do understand them. They're kind of like rolling sculptures. They're very personal, functional art piece that because of the condition, because of the patina, it's never about status or social positioning or money. Although, unfortunately, what we do is generally brutally expensive to realize. That's not what it's about. And they incite smiles and thumbs up and stories of memories or family from people versus preconceived notions of wealth or it's just kind of something different.
Well, and there's also the idea that I just pulled up next to a 57 Buick in my Porsche, and that Buick just smoked my fucking ass.
Yeah.
So, you know,
That's always good.
I've seen these cars. They're fantastic. But, you know, as an automotive designer, I'm wondering what's drawing you towards watches.
Well, first off, let's clear the air in that I am not technically a certified automotive manufacturer, designer, engineer. I'm just an idiot who followed his passions and learned as he went. So ever since I was crawling, I've been a geek for design. Be that transportation, be that architecture, furniture, watches, antiques, whatever it might be. And growing up in New York City as a youngster, there was such constant sensory overload and inspiration that I just naturally am drawn to great design. And then transportation, you know, cars were always a hobby for me. And once I came out to California for a job and realized you got a license at 15 and a half, I decided I ain't leaving this joint. And really cars were kind of a very interesting combination of many different arts that I'd already practiced, again, just as a hobby, never trained, but sculpting and fine art painting and woodworking and leatherwork and then mechanical and all that stuff. But it's like this incredibly extroverted platform that combines so many different technical arts. And more I was disenchanted with what modern production car companies offered. And that in turn, their dysfunction in essence becomes an opportunity for geeks like me. Mm-hmm. So I just followed my dreams and started the company, and we've just been running ever since.
And watches in general just sort of go along with automotive?
Totally. Gears, cogs, finishes, noises, mechanical things that cause reactions to people and to time or motion. It's all the same thing. So I think that's why you always see car geeks or watch geeks, and watch geeks are car geeks. And
well, I think you also see a lot of automotive manufacturers aligning themselves with watchmakers.
Oh, that's a marketing shit show, in my humble opinion.
You don't see the beauty of a
Breitling Bentley.
Well, no, that's bullshit. I'm talking about, say, like an Amvox Jaeger-LeCoultre.
Bullshit too.
So
The
they're
only
all
thing
bullshit.
less bullshit about that's we use the same leather on the band.
I just happen to think it's a cool watch.
You don't
maybe.
even have to hire the dude with the English accent because it's not even an English company anymore.
Well, but that's it. Well, so you got Bremont. At least they're an English company.
Yeah, good
working
guys.
with Jaguar.
Yeah, you and I met them. Nice
We did.
people.
Nick English.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
And hey, the only reason their product with Jaguar is working is because he worked directly with Ian, the lead designer And it was a personal geek out project.
So you think it's a Brit on Brit thing?
Yeah, and then the DNA is honest because it was two geeks for watches and cars who said, oh, yeah, we should do something together. And they just did it, and it worked great. They didn't talk to the focus group. They didn't talk to the marketing department, the branding people, or any of the pencil pushers that derail design and product. I'm just guessing. Yeah, I think it's cool.
No, I mean, I think that there's a given synergy between automotive and micromechanics, except for, as you know, the scale of it is the scale. But I could definitely see why car makers, for commercial reasons, have aligned themselves with watchmakers.
Oh, it's perfectly logical. And also for permeating key demographics, you know, they know that if they get the visibility in the annals of watch media, then they're going to get a crossover to the car. And then in the car media world, when they mention the watch, in turn, they're going to get a crossover of the watch geeks. So, no, it's perfectly logical. I just, again, am disenchanted by the whorehouse that is modern product design and marketing. That oftentimes means the product isn't as distinct as the poetry they come up with.
Well, I think it's clear the automotive manufacturers themselves have never been the ones to make the watch. So there's going to be a chasm there, because the watch company, whoever they are, already has their own heritage, already has their own history that they have to adhere to as well. It may not totally.
Yeah, but let me run Jaeger for a day.
And what would you come up with?
Oh.
What would it be? What if you had one day? What would be the watch that you could do the most with at Jaeger in a day?
The Bugatti dash clock is sexy as all hell, and it's an absolute no-brainer to turn into either a chrono or a GMT. It is such low-hanging fruit, it blows my mind that Jaeger hasn't gone there. And granted, it was a design that in fact was even used in aircraft in that era. And it was used by Talbot Lago and Figoni Falaschi and all different European car makers at the time. And they do minor tweaks to each one. But they were always present, you know, the beautiful old Jaeger clocks, just as in aircraft. You know, you'd always see them back in the day. And that whole DNA, that language, that history is just begging to be, I don't know, exploited is really the wrong word. I think these modern watch automotive collaborations are more exploitive. But that's just true, honest DNA of their brand that could yield such a killer collection.
And what I don't think a lot of people even know that Jaeger made dash instruments for both vehicles and aircraft back in the day. So I think that's a wonderful way to certainly honor the heritage of the company and the history. But as far as DNA goes, there's a particular instrument that you and I are both thinking of in our head. And again, I'll post that up on the Instagram page so you guys can see that instrument. But I invite you to go look at some of the original stuff that Jaeger did before it even said La Culture on the dial. So.
Yeah, and I'll share also on your Instagram, I'll give you a bunch of files. Being the geek that I am, when I go to car shows all over the world and to private collections and all the cool stuff I'm fortunate enough to be able to get access to, I have amassed the most ridiculous photo catalog. You've seen it.
Oh, it's
stupid. I mean, I have files of thousands of photos of hinges. And then I have another pile of files that's just on cloisonne or horn buttons or dash knobs and switches. So as you can imagine, the extensive file of just vintage car clocks actually starting to get me into trouble, to be quite frank, because...
you got a lot of photos.
Yeah, well, and the gears are turning because I'm going, okay, I got photos. But what can I do with those photos? What opportunities lie within? And it's starting to keep me up at night.
You know, I just discovered Instagram just a week ago. So since I'm only following one person, I'm not terribly flooded just yet. So,
Grandpa, welcome.
Thank you.
Instagram.
Thank you. You know, I move a little slow on these things. Somebody has to show me how to load it onto my phone, perhaps.
I was super slow, too. I finally just did it because with a modern brand, you're an idiot not to do it.
Well, and plus, you got kids.
No, my kids don't do any social media platforms. But they tease me watching me do it.
But they show you. Hey, if you're confused, they're going to say, oh, Dad, come on. Really?
Instagram, actually, I do really enjoy, because especially for the watch community, there's so many cool groups and individuals and collectors and dealers posting stuff that it's good fun.
Well, to me, watch collecting brings a lot of really great people together.
Yeah.
There's a common passion that we share, and us geeking out only pisses off our wives.
Yeah. But you know what's cool about the watch community too is I think in general, and of course there are exceptions that are going to come to everyone's mind before this sentence is complete. There's a democracy to it. There's no barrier of entry per se. There are Casio geeks. There are Patek geeks. There's geeks everywhere and in between. When I did Talking Watches with Ben.
Hodinky?
Yeah, at Hodinky.
Yeah.
He was like, what reference number is that? I'm like, dude, I don't know. It's just really cool. I like the font. I like that indice, And okay, so like the Patek guys, maybe that's an example that goes against my judgment. But, you can see a guy, have a Nixon on and he digs it, and good for him. Kudos
Whatever
to
makes
him.
you happy.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not going to begrudge anybody. It's so funny, the guys that know the reference numbers. They're the same guys that knew that the Barry sax player from Tower of Power played on the Richard Marx record. They're such liner note geeks. Come on.
Car geeks can be the worst, so I'm very well trained and highly tolerant.
Well, but it's a Tim Allen. It's
Yeah.
right? So what? It's a 17108. I don't give a fuck. And speaking of a specific watch, what's drawing you towards one watch or the other? Why say a Nivram, except for the fact that it's just really obscure? I've seen some of your those globe-like watches that you have.
I guess kind of like my car collection. I like the orphans, the bastards, the freaks, the just more distinct and singular in their approach to the solution. So I think watches are very interesting for a designer at large because there's certain constraints. Legibility must be of paramount importance and I think is often disregarded.
Agreed.
And that drives me nuts.
I agree.
Although I do have one watch that's hard to tell, but I dig it. Anyway.
Yeah, but then you can just say, listen, I don't give a fuck what time it is today.
Yeah, all right, I'll take 10 seconds to figure it out and marvel in all the unnecessary complexity. but I love jump hours. I love world times. Lately, I've been kind of dumpster diving into teens to the 30s, like early transition watches. Not so much like the marriage watches of guys that take, the pocket watch and solder some crap on it, but the real transition watches. All the way through to, I don't know why, but I'm drawn to bullhead or bullnose watches, funky chronos. But I think if you made me focus, God forbid, I think the reoccurring theme when I look at my watch collection that I seem to be going back to again and again is like, same with cars, like 1937. There's something about 1937. I don't know what it is.
Is it a deco thing?
Yeah,
is it a nouveau thing?
Yeah, exactly. I think you nailed it. It's like the tail end of deco and the beginning of nouveau as a design language. Mm-hmm. There's something that draws me to that, and like Omegas specifically of that era.
That font.
Yeah, the font, the indice, the scale. I've lately started to get a little bit more open-minded and getting down into the smaller diameters, but kind of my line in the sand is 37 mil. I'm going under 37. But your buddy in Paris got me in trouble recently, and he had a couple crazy cool watches that I bought that were even like 34, 35.
Well, Antoine will get us all into trouble, Jonathan. And he's gotten me into a lot of trouble over the years. That's Antoine Macedo on Rue de Madame.
He's great. He's a great guy. He knows his shit. And it's funny, too, because like I'm walking through this store and I'm like, all right, we're cool. Other than those Jacques Dros and the things I cannot afford, I'm not getting in any trouble today. This is all good because I had just been in Germany where I bought like 5 watches. Then as he gets to know me and the wine comes out, he starts quietly leaving the room and going to various hidden vaults and safes and coming back with just more and more cool shit that speaks so directly to me. So, oh no, this is going to be bad.
Oh, you got right in your head very quickly. And then the new old stock came out.
Yeah, then he's like, oh, you like new old stock, huh?
Mm-hmm. I have a Longines.
Oh.
And I know that you and I are both drawn to a specific brand. Is there a Grail watch in your sights at this time?
I don't even remember the reference, but that L'Angenson jump hour, the big dual window black.
The Zeit work.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's something about that. There's just something to it that just screams to me. And again, being a font and vintage geek, I think he has done a wonderful job of kind of having his own DNA, but reflecting on design history and different eras of design and kind of doing his own thing to it.
I think we're due, actually, on the show to do a Long and Sona history lesson. I think it's one of the great, if not the greatest watchmaker in the world, certainly right up there with Patek Philippe.
Yeah.
You know, you have to take a little bit of a step aside if you're a Swiss watch person because it's a German brand, and some people have a hard time with the Saxon.
Yeah, you know what? Again, that purist limitation bullshit, like I just totally disregard
I
that.
totally agree, and I think, as we were talking earlier, the Germans do just about everything better than everybody.
Yeah, except for one thing I would say is like my German watches, it's so symbolic and maybe inappropriate to judge as such, but like, for example, my wife's current wife, ex-Audi, it has this stupid fucking button for the seat memory. Okay, there's 4 seat memory buttons, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then there is a set button. Okay, I get that, right? Okay, push and hold set and push the number. Okay, I got that. Then there's a fucking off button. Why? What are you going to do with the off button? You thought too long about this. You were too Germanic, and it just happened. It's asinine. And then try and work the navigation. I forget it. I just pull out my iPhone. I don't want nothing to do with it. But 993 twin turbo, boom, nailed it. Sort of focus group Wall Street, where no, this car is for doing one thing and doing a very well, and they nailed it. Now they're kind of like all the car makers trying to do a little bit of everything. But like the German watches, I will say, like the casework, there's a harsh edge to it, kind of like conversing with a German. There's an edge. There's a coldness or technical aspect to it that I find very interesting, but it comes through in their entire culture. I mean, literally, like almost in culinary, in architecture, in communication, there's always like sort of a blunt edge versus a chamfered
it's very
edge.
guttural sort of.
Which I totally get and I respect, but it's interesting that you see it permeate so many different aspects of design and community.
You know, it's interesting because as you were just saying, I'm thinking German watches are actually very different than German cars. I don't find a coldness about a German car. I find an absolute precision, the way it sounds when the door is shut.
There's a coldness. Spend more time in my wife's Audi, you would have felt it.
All right. Well, I got enough time in my Audi. What with its on-off button to control the seats.
Do you have that stupid on-off button?
Yeah,
too?
you haven't liked it for years. It's the question that'll plague mankind until we're old and gray.
Listen, I hope they never answer it, because the more the big car companies don't answer these questions, the more opportunities that are created for niche freaks and craftsmen and geeks like me. So it's all good.
Well, the only thing I miss on my Audi are the shift paddles. My previous Audi had the paddles. This one doesn't, but I'm older now. And back to watches, and we can roll it out on this. You were allowed to keep 3 watches in your collection, just 3. And I know it's large.
That's like when car magazines ask me, "What's your favorite car?" It's like,
that's why I'm giving you 3.
Okay, all right. I have Jacques Cousteau's old nautical watch from the teens, 43 millimeter sterling silver, patina to all hell, ruined crocodile band, onion crown, super cool, love it, cracks on the dial. That's the loudest watch I own.
Does it run?
Oh, it runs like a top. I mean,
Okay.
it runs like a bomb and a tick, 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 tick. But I love that watch. That watch, I don't think I would ever part with, no matter what happens.
It's got story more than anything.
Yeah, I'm a geek for the story and
Sure.
the patina and the history, and it's irreplaceable. So I think that one for sure. And then there's something about my Blancpain Aqua Timer. Is it the Aqua Timer? I think so. It's the silica blasted, deep black porcelain dial. It's just something simple and classy and unassuming about it, and just every detail is executed to the highest order. Third one. I don't know. I got to go dig through all my drawers and get my head around it. I have a Duesenberg dealership award watch that back in the 30s for whatever the dealer in the country that's sold the most cars got the watch as an award. That's pretty damn cool.
Is there anything on the back? Anything on the back?
Yeah, it has Homeboy's name and the date and the Salesman Award. And I have a 30s, I think it's a Gruen, that was a Chevrolet dealer award that's in the shape of the 32 Chevy grill. That's super cool. But it's super tiny, so, I mean, stupid small.
Can't even see it. I know the watch. And it's interesting because I would pick 3 watches out of your collection that aren't those 3.
What would you grab? Or the Pierre Coons I really love, but
the
it's
Pierre
replaceable.
Coons is, hope it doesn't break.
Yeah, I heard.
I love the Gerald Genta. Smoking.
Which one? The black and white one?
The one with
modern
that
the rubber face?
It's
the bi-retrograde?
The bi-retrograde
Yeah,
with
jump hour.
the date at the bottom.
That's good shit.
That's slick shit there. You've got, I think, one of the proto Urworks, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah. Yeah, I've got the first year work, the 101. That's pretty nifty.
Reference Geek 101.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
You busted me.
That's a beauty.
That and
That's it.
I only know a couple reference numbers.
Well, that one's really unusual. And then there's another, the Jacques Dro that you have.
Yeah,
is really,
I love their stuff.
So the 3 that I would pick out of your box are different than the 3 you would pick. But the story on those 3 to me is just like, oh, oof.
Well, can I keep 6?
Okay, go with 6.
Okay,
if
then
they're
I'll
the
add
3
your...
that I...
Okay,
okay, fair enough. Anything else? I think we've pretty much covered it all.
I don't know. I like Pateks. I've got like a 57 regulator shape Patek that I love that we bought on a trip in New York. And then...
That's a very dressy watch.
Yeah, but like you wear it with jeans. I mean, it's gold and black, but it's...
But
subtle.
hours, the idea is hours and minutes as a dress watch, as opposed to your chronograph Patek, which is like a sporting watch.
I change a watch every day. So I don't define between a dress. I mean, I'll wear the year work to work on a day I'm not welding.
Right. That's good.
So no, I don't really differentiate that. But the recently a client, grand sort of complicated story, but basically a gift. I got a 5170 white gold.
Ooh, it's sweet.
Swing.
Oh, it's
now,
sweet.
would have never blown that kind of capital on that. If I was into that price point, I would be barking up different trees.
Sure.
But, I'm looking for the Bulova, like that one we got in Paris is so cool. And it made me start looking into Bolovas of the 60s and 70s. In my opinion, like 90% of them have no great sort of DNA. They're kind of boring. But man, that 10% are so cool. Like I want the Chronograph C, they called it. Very unromantic name. Now more
great
known
watch,
as
though.
the Stars and Stripes from 1973. There's
Great
something
watch.
super cool and funky. That Grand Central Time dealer in New York had one, and I wanted it, and he just pissed me off because he's selling it as NOS, and then he wanted to charge me extra for the box.
Which is wrong.
No, I told him where to put that box, but now I regret it.
Well,
it was actually a good deal.
Yeah, but don't regret it. And to me, we're purists, but for some reason that Accutron, every time I see one, I think, ooh, I want one.
You know what though?
But then I'd never wear it.
And it was totally unreliable, gave me nothing but trouble. Like I have one of those vintage Omega Speed Sonic with the cool 60s lobster. You ever seen those? The lobster band? I don't know if I showed you. I just took it to Feldmar for like the 10th time. I'm done. It's constantly breaking. Omega's service center sucks. They have no respect for their own history or heritage. They literally like a car dealership. If you roll in with a car older than 5 years of age, if they do you a service, it's a disservice. They'd like you to go bye-bye.
And you say bye-bye.
Just come buy another one. I think Omega says the same thing with a watch. Like, well, we still make that model. We have the dark side of the gray side of the purple side of the darker gray, blackish side of the moon edition. It's very special. Why do you want your old man on the moon? It's just silly to me.
Well, anything that they do is... It's hard to explain. I'm not sure why you're taking it to Feldmar. I don't want to poo-poo Feldmar, but if I had an Omega watch, I'm probably taking it to Omega.
Well, no, I took it to Feldmar, sent it to Omega, and that's fine. And I did it back before our mutual friend Sal had passed, and I had a long relationship with him.
Missed that guy.
And because it was the 7th time under warranty, so...
Did you get the watch there at Feldmar?
No. It's like a 60s model. I think it was an eBay score, but it sucks. I got to get rid of it before it breaks again.
Well, I'm big on only having watches that I'm wearing. I'm not, sure, there's a couple of vampires in the safe that I'm afraid to take out to the light of day, but...
Well, I've got a couple quartz watches, and I can't do it.
Well, I mean...
Just too big of a geek, but like they were gifts from friends or...
You've given me shit for wearing a G-Shock, for fuck's sake.
As I should.
As everybody should.
Geek.
I think we've said it all, haven't we, on the Watch Geek Time?
I suppose we have.
Jonathan Ward, I thank you so much for coming out today, all the way from your place about a mile and a half.
Well, I hope to be back, and we'll have some more exciting stuff to talk about because, as I mentioned, I've been stuck staying up late at night thinking about design and watches and my aesthetic and my sort of theology behind Icon. And I'm trying to cook up a new watch brand. I'm total idiot for doing that one. But
I'm not sure you're an idiot, but I think it's going to take a lot of passion, a lot of balls.
That I got both of those, and I got to scrounge up, see if I have the money. I just worry because the business to me it's actually very interesting, but highly dysfunctional. The ownership compression and the all the way through to distribution and retailing being controlled by a few key players, and the lack of expression and creativity and novel designs in the industry when the industry itself is complaining that it's kind of a quiet time. There's opportunity and there's strife all in the same.
Well, what
paragraph.
a story, though.
Yeah.
All-American automotive brand, all-American watch brand, made by the all-American automotive brand. Quite a story, in my estimation.
Me too. And frankly, it's one of those things that's become so important to me. I literally just want to do it so I can put it on my wrist and wear it and have a tactile, dimensioned, done thing and get it out of my brain because it's literally hurting me. I have like 3D rotatable models in my head, and I must barf them out and see them created. And that's happened to me in the past with automotive design.
Well, listen, it's not easy to get a car made, and I have all the faith in the world you'll get some watches made.
Well, thank you.
Jonathan Ward, icon4x4.com. That's ICON4x4.com. Thanks again for coming out, Jonathan. I am the Watch Geek, Scott Goldman. We'll be right back after these messages.
A hungry bird said to a crocodile, "Can I have those bits of meat stuck between your teeth?" "Dive in," said the crocodile. "I've had a good nosh." Next day, the grateful bird brought all his mates, and from then on, the birds were never hungry, and the crocodiles never had to fork out for a hygienist. And the moral is, goodwill spread around gets around. This story was brought to you by ING Direct, 92% of whose mortgage customers would recommend them to a friend. ING Direct, a decent way to do banking. Visit ingdirect.co.uk.
UK residents 18 plus, 50,000 to £1 million subject to status. 92% based on ING Direct customer satisfaction survey, April 2011.
Sometimes you get more done without a boss. Not that leadership isn't valuable. It's just that when you don't have anyone looking over your shoulder, you often come up with better stuff. At Honda, we run our research and development team as a separate company, giving them room to mess around, doodle, try, fail, try again, and eventually come up with something that surprises them as much as it surprises us. Do you believe in the power of dreams?
Rolex, Patek Philippe, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Omega, Cartier, Breguet, and just about any other watch brands that come to mind. This is the Watch Geek Time Podcast.
Welcome back to Watch Geek Time. This is the WatchGeekTime.com podcast. I am your Watch Geek host Scott Goldman. Always on the boards is
Jody.
Jody. What do you think of that interview we just did?
You know what? I was intrigued, actually. I was quiet because I loved his story. I love cars.
Quiet?
So
You didn't say a word. You didn't make a peep.
I know. But a fascinating guy. So, yeah, really good interview.
Yeah, thank you. And he is a fascinating guy, and his watch collection is really eclectic, and he's got some really amazingly unique pieces, really bespoke pieces. He's got one of the very first pieces Urwerk did. It's actually a prototype.
Right.
It was amazing. In the interview, I actually asked him, as you heard, what 3 pieces would he keep, and they were totally different than the 3 pieces of his that I would have kept. And he goes, oh yeah, I like those 3 too, so let me keep 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's really great, and a very gracious guy, Jonathan Ward. So thanks again, Jonathan. So another week, another jam-packed show. Oof.
That's great.
I'm tired.
You are?
I am. I'm tired. Next week's show, my WGT guests will include Gary Vadetta from Element in Time and Leo Gwynn from the Yazoo Le Culture Boutique in Beverly Hills. We've been trying to get Leo in for a while, but he's been very busy.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's weird. That whole block, what we call Richmont Row on Brighton, it's going away. Cartier's taken away the whole block. So he's been very busy moving the store, and he's been supposed to have joined us a couple times. He doesn't want to do it on phone. He wants to be here in the studio.
Okay.
So I think we'll honor him.
That's good.
Jody, you want to give us a little preview on the next week's Watch Geek topic, word, buzz, what?
For next week?
Yes. Tourbillon. Next week's Watch Geek topic will be tourbillon.
Oh, that's a complication. We're going to talk about complications, Scott.
Here we go with the complication. As I keep saying, it's only a complication if it's other than hours, minutes, and seconds and a date. This business about a tourbillon being a complication, no.
No, but does 2 tourbillons like a resonance equal a complication?
Well, we'll look at tourbillons that have got multiple tourbillons. Thanks again to our guest, Jonathan Ward of Icon 4x4, for sharing his time with us today. Check out the amazing vehicles at icon4x4.com. As always, thanks to my announcer, David. And of course, thanks to my Watch Geek wingman, Jody.
Hey, thank you.
He made the trip all the way from Malibu today, folks. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
It's a conversation about heritage, history, and why we're all hooked on horology. It's the Watch Geek Time podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.